Hey friends, this is Katya, the vegan powerlifter, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have quite an interesting topic, kind of a little unrelated to sports or nutrition or veganism, but I'm currently in Russia and I have observed this phenomenon of beautiful Russian women, young, ready to, I guess, get married or presenting the best that they've got, just being everywhere, walking around on the streets and groceries, at the doctor's office, doesn't matter. And they're gorgeous, right? And it's pretty known in the world that like Slavic women are considered beautiful, desired wife, like she's such a good traditional wife, and trad wives are in fashion, I guess. So I've observed those gals, and I've observed a lot of babushkas next to them. And recently it just hit me, like, those beautiful young women who are considered the most beautiful and desirable in the whole world. At what point do they turn into babushkas? Like, what is the point of no return? Why does this happen at all? And it kind of made me sad because I've had my own babushkas and I've always loved them, but never have I ever seen them as a role model in terms of like what I want to be like when I age. I could imagine my friends, my college friends, parents, as a role model of what I want to be like when I grow older, because they were successful women, they had their careers, they had their kids, they supported themselves after they retire, so they've built enough of an investment portfolio to be able to retire without relying on whatever the government pensions exist at that time. Plus that stuff is like less guaranteed than whatever you save for yourself anyways in any country, including Russia, where there are government pensions. But like, my mom is on a government pension now. It's $180. Well, depending on what dollar to ruble conversion is, but let's say $160 to $180. What can you buy with that money? If you have a car, that's enough to pay for car insurance and car repairs and gas. And maybe utilities. What about food? Anyways, I found that I don't have any role models in terms of what I want to be like, who I want to be like when I grow older among the Slavic women that I know personally. We're not talking like celebrities. We're not talking anybody who I see on TV, regardless in, the US or in post-Soviet space. I don't want to be a babushka, and I want to find out, I want to discover by this conversation with you guys in the comments and sharing my own thoughts in this video today. How can we avoid kind of turning into this wise matriarch that nobody really considers a real power, and the only resort of happiness for her is taking care of her grandkids and pickling things that she grew in her own garden? How can we avoid that being the only thing that Slavic women turn into? How can we do more? How can we be better? So let's get into it. How to not become a babushka. I must say the scarf is kind of endearing, and it kind of suits me. This is my mother's. Okay, so you probably know that women in the West tend to focus more on their careers. You're watching this in English, you probably live in the US. Let me know where you live in the comments. I'm very curious, by the way. From the YouTube analytics, I see that the majority of the people who watch this channel are in the US, but there are some from Canada and the UK and Germany. So yeah, there was even a person from Australia at one point. Let me know where you're from. I see that women in the West focus on their careers more, which is kind of nice. But then on the other hand, they also have this responsibility of taking care of their kids by themselves, because there's no babushka who is going to come and kindly offer to have their kid for however long, because that's all she lives for. So she needs to save enough money for daycare, for kids' education and healthcare, plus education in the US is changing a lot right now, so it is more likely that you are going to have to pay for a private school, because public school system is basically degraded and is going to get more degraded as time goes on. So if you're poor, I guess you're just gonna have uneducated kids, and why have kids at all if that is going to be the future? Women are like expected to focus on their career. Women want to focus on career more, but then no maternity leave and responsibilities on taking care of the kids after the kids are there are still more of like a women's responsibility, even if a woman is married, typically, even in the US. Compared to like in Russia, women just want to get married and have a kid pretty much as soon as they can, which, well, interesting goal. How about building some kind of a support base for yourself first? But then she sees a lot of role models and examples that have done the exact same. And in the Soviet, well, now there's still maternity leave in Russia. In the Soviet, there was also maternity leave. There was more support and like equalization for women, because everybody was equal, like everybody was a tovarish, right? And women could do more while having kids, rather than like now, when they have to pretty much ditch their jobs to take care of the kids, and everybody encourages them to do so, otherwise you're a bad mother. So the career kind of fluctuates, especially if you have more than one kid. You go on maternity leave for 3 years and you go back to work maybe before you have another kid, and then you go back on maternity leave, and then by the time you're ready to go back to the workforce, you're like 40, and at that point it is incredibly hard to find a job for a woman, so she usually stays at home, just taking care of the family and doing all of the second shift work that nobody's helping with and nobody's even saying thank you for. And we're kind of expected to do that. I feel like in the Western society too, but if a woman makes more than a dude, they usually split responsibilities more evenly, and nobody's expecting for a woman to like ditch her hobbies as much as in Russia. It's like, what are you doing? You're not taking good care of the family. Family comes first, what this really means is you come last as a wife. It means nobody says family comes first to a dude. If you want to watch another rant of mine on like women's rights, by the way, you will also enjoy this video on the International Women's Day, the 8th of March, which I will link in the description and also put in the corner here. But yeah, I think women are just being shouted at from every movie, from every relative, that it is their responsibility to cook and clean and maintain a beautiful home and take kids everywhere and plan vacations, and also be pretty at the same time. It kind of wears them out, and employers don't really want to hire somebody who has been out of workforce for many years. Of course, while being on maternity leave, women are promised that their place is kept after they come back, but then your position is also kept. You have not advanced in your career like at all. So yeah, you can go back, but you have not made as much progress in your position and in your salary as your man. And God forbid you divorce, you have not been probably maintaining as much of a physical fitness and hobbies that you can resort to relax and mentally take a break from all of the family and work responsibilities. It really wears Eastern European women out. And I think this trend is very similar in post-Soviet countries as much as like Eastern European countries. So yeah, in the West, folks really try to keep their hobbies, and I do see more guys, especially like kind of without touching the American South, where it is a lot more patriarchal and a lot more like Eastern Europe, and women want to get married soon and they want to be just trad wives. I do see the trends of like more even responsibility split, which is nice. Thank you guys if you're a feminist. You get a huge like from me if you support women's rights, because hey, it helps you too. It helps everybody if we're more equal in this society. It's better for the economy. But yeah, in the Eastern Europe, I just see that she has been totally dedicating herself to the home and the family, and then she's not as advanced in her career. She doesn't make as much money. She doesn't usually look as good, or she isn't as healthy because she has been putting that on the back burner. So by age 50, she's kind of starting to age a lot sooner than she could have if she was keeping up her like gym routine, if she was keeping up her hobbies. The mental health is also not the last thing to consider when we talk about aging, right? Because this mentality of like, oh, I'm too old for this, I'm too old for that. I really see this mainly in Eastern European women. I have not had a single client from the US, or the UK or Canada who was like, yeah, I think I'm like 45. I'm probably too old for weights. Usually my clients from the US, they are all 55 plus. Like recently, I got a client who is 72, and she let me know that her goal now is to compete in a powerlifting competition, which is admirable. How often do you see women who are retired and they're like, yeah, I think it's time to go compete. I think it's time to do something new for myself and put my body through another challenge. And I think it's very realistic and I can do it in a healthy way. I do not know many, if any at all, post-Soviet women who have reached out to me past age like 37 who wanted to do any kind of lifting outside of losing weight. Hell, the majority of Eastern European women who I've worked with, they only wanted to lose weight and they did not want to work out because they didn't want to get big, they didn't want to harm their knees or back, even though those body parts only benefit from heavy lifting. But let's get the science aside from this. We're talking about babushkas here. I doubt that they realize that sports and heavy lifting actually benefits their aging and not them turning into like an old grandma, because if you have more muscle mass, then as you age, you can keep less body fat on your body because your muscle is going to work for you burning that body fat, and you are going to look better rather than just trying to be thin forever and then you become skinny fat because all you've been doing is kind of sort of dieting here and there when you gain a couple pounds and not really gaining that muscle mass that is going to carry you through non-weight gain phase of your aging into a healthy and non-obese retirement. They just don't think about it this way. I have not met many Eastern European women who wanna, except for athletes, of course, who wanna train for a healthy retirement, like that one, and it's sad. And I think that's a big reason why we turn into babushkas here, because you don't have a lot of muscle mass, so you then just gain fat really quickly after making all of those pancakes and pies for your grandkids. Anyways, I really hope that modern women in post-Soviet countries are going to like catch the trend and really focus on themselves first, and on their health first, and on their career first, and then on everything else, and enter partnerships and marriage, not just because they're afraid nobody's going to marry them ever and somebody's always going to find somebody prettier and younger, but because they want to get married and they think it's time for them to get married. And I think it's time for them to have a kid. This trend of like giving birth as soon as possible, I think is really ruining women's mental health and physical health in a major way here. Whereas like in the West, women are usually ready to have a kid when they have prepared mentally when they have prepared financially, and when their partner is also prepared for that, which may be a little later than in Russia, but there's nothing wrong in having a kid after 30 rather than after 20. And I think it's affecting how women age. Sorry. I think it's affecting how women age significantly. I think the cushion that they have built for themselves, like socioeconomically, is really affecting their retirement. And like, nobody's saving for retirement in Russia. That's like another huge rant of mine that I've been talking with all of my girlfriends. And they're like, huh, what do you mean, like, invest into retirement? We have pensions. And I'm like, you don't know what you're gonna have in 20 or 30 or 40 years. You just don't know. And they're like, yeah, if we don't know, like, what's the point? Maybe there will be no market. So anyways, that's a whole another rant, but the fact that people just don't do that and don't plan for retirement here completely blows my mind. And that could be another reason why, like, all women have left here is taking care of the cucumbers they grow and pickling them and taking care of the yard and giving all that to your grandkids and taking care of grandpigs, because they don't have the money for any other hobbies. Like, that is the only hobby that they can afford. They can't travel. Yes, healthcare is free, thank God. Otherwise, there'd probably be major problems with their health, or they would just not be able to afford it. And women are discriminated severely when it comes to getting a second education, or like affording a second education is not free here, right? The first education is free in Russia, usually, even though it's becoming less and less so. There's less free slots in universities, let's just say that. But second education is not free. A master's and a doctorate is not free, and usually young people get it like exactly after their first degree if they want to stay in academia. Rarely do we see the trend of women coming back to the university for a second degree 40 years later, 30 years, 20 years later, just because they got bored and they want to change their career. Even though in the West, I've observed my friends' parents just being like, yeah, I'm sick of being a biologist. I'm gonna go get a marketing degree. I wanna work for a startup now. I think that'll be more fun. I'll be around like new people, young people. I wanna do a new thing. Or they wrote a book and they start like promoting themselves and having a personal brand, and they just start doing something completely new and unrelated to their careers. And I see this a lot in my friends' parents, like from Duke, right? I cannot come up with anybody, like literally zero people. I'm not able to in Russia whose parents are doing something like that. Not even considering like cool things, changing careers at all, getting a second education at all after age 40. They might maybe get some continuing education from like their organization, in that organization, if they have been working for the same company for X amount of years, and like that's just what everybody does. But they're not gonna go to university and kind of just change everything. And I've been told, I asked a friend of mine, like, oh, your mother retired, like, what is she gonna do now? And he's like, what are you gonna do? What do you mean? And I was like, yeah, is she gonna like travel somewhere? Is she gonna like change her career? And he was like, she worked at a bread factory for her whole life. And she worked like at a meat processing plant and whatever was in their little city. What do you mean getting an education? She's 60. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. She's still young. She's healthy. She has a lot of energy. What is she gonna do? He just totally did not get my question, which is kind of sad. I know her, and I felt bad for asking that, but he's right. She can't go study anywhere. She will not get a job no matter where she sends her resumes, no matter where she applies, which is extremely sad. So her only option is to put a headscarf on and start feeding birds and go to the yard and grow the vegetables. So it looks like not only is life pretty hard in Russia, it's harder for women, and it's like impossible for older women. I can only compare it to the life of BIPOC people in the US, BIPOC women in the US. That's probably the best comparison. Anyways, this video came kind of sad, but I didn't want it to be. Maybe you will comment something that will make me feel better about the future of our Russian babushkas, and I hope that we will get more equal rights here in Eastern Europe as life goes on, and in post-Soviet countries as life goes on. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Do make sure to watch the video on the 8th of March. If you liked this one, you will really like that one as well. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.